We have one appointment, and that's not till 9:15, so we move on to the consent agenda. Anybody got any questions of anything there on M9?
One question with regard to number 4. It's changing my son Patrick from temporary temporary. Can I vote on that or not? I shouldn't probably.
We could put it on an action item so you could recuse or, you know what I'm saying? So you can have the option to.
Optional.
Because I'd have to recuse myself for the whole works.
If you were on the consent agenda, right? So you want to move
It
that?
doesn't
I'll
matter.
move it to the action item number or consent item number 4 to action item number
11,
11.
12. Because we have Wildcat in
Yep,
it.
all right.
That's fine. Oh, well, that probably would work better anyway. The top though, there's mine.
Brian, are you here? Chris Hartley on the maintenance there on his pickup. Is that March 1st when he's gonna leave it down in Hoka again, or is he gonna drive it all year?
Always, but we could probably put it on low for a while.
Donna, you need to mute.
As long as they cookie. We just press select.
Sorry.
Goes over there and hides over there. Why shouldn't go there? And come down to a few days. I'm sure you can figure it out. Thank you.
Well, I think we should not leave that pickup sitting in Hoka for stealing gas. I think, it's probably just as easy quicker for him to go home Brownsville way as to go to Hoka and then go up to his place. I don't think we're saving anything, and I really don't like that pickup sitting in Hoka overnight where people steal the gas and stuff out of it.
It sits outside, it doesn't go in the garage.
There's no garage, correct?
Yeah, currently it's outside. We move our sign guy to Hello, which hasn't happened yet, but should be happening soon. Then they should somewhere get that.
Did you get my message about the board meeting today?
Okay, John and Donna, you need to mute.
I'm sorry, I just did.
Okay.
Well, we can discuss that at a later date. So I mean, this here with Chris has nothing to do with that
No.
situation.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda with the notation that we're moving item number 4 to action item 12.
Second.
Been a motion and a second to move action item number 4 to 12. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Carries. Agenda passes. Action items. Consider approving service agreement with Dynamic Lifestyle Invaders, Martin.
The e-waste contract for dynamic recycling. Basically continuation of the contract from previous years.
Yeah.
And I did check their bonding. They're currently current with the state of Wisconsin. They have $150,000 or $175,000 available in the event that they were to close and they can't get rid of the waste. That's sort of how it works. And their regulatory compliance is fine. So there's no issues with that. But other than that, that's basically, and then Sam did review the contract. He did change the language and they said fine. But I didn't know if they were going to agree to everything, but they were like, yep. And so the indemnification is a little better geared towards Houston County, meaning we got less liability. So that was changed. And other than that, the prices are about exactly the same as last year. Very change would surprise me. I didn't know if they would have gone down, but they sure didn't. So, but other than that, it's basically about the whole situation.
Now, when you mean prices, the fees that they.
The fees, right, the
Okay.
structure for the various items.
Okay.
And then other than that, it looks like we budgeted 21,000 last year. We only went through about 15, so it wasn't too bad. I don't know as though that'd be the case this year. And then one other thing that's of note is that this does not include cell phones. We're doing cell phones differently because the cell phones, what we're doing there is we're trying to get those recycled under the e-source program for the score report, so it makes our position look better. But one of the things that we just ran into is that with some of the cell phones, you have to be very careful because some of the batteries can get hot. And we had a couple of them that got pretty close, and we took those to lacrosse and they handled them for now. But I'm definitely gonna have to talk with the people on how to identify the problem units on that kind of stuff, so. That's basically what we've got in the dynamic.
When the various electronic pieces come in, we just put that all in one container. They sort it out and determine how much we're paying.
Right, and we can probably get our price a little lower if we start to do a little more separation. Okay, here's your rebuttal. But the thing about the separation is it may not be as easy as it seems. In other words, we got to keep a dedicated section here, and then these sources and stuff like that. And so it might save us $20, but we might spend $300 to manage it. So
It's working well the way it is.
it isn't too bad.
I think it takes more room too. If you start separating out, you'll have a container, and then how much do you expect of this size product versus this size product?
Exactly.
So more room.
Yeah.
I think as we are doing it now, and they've been good to work with. They're a
Right.
growing company over there. Just
Yep.
they got something going. So.
Mhm.
I see it as something positive for the county. I've moved to approve the service agreement with Dynamic.
I'll second it.
Been a motion and a second to approve this agreement. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approved. Number 2, consider approving a
Thank
quote
you.
from
Thank you.
Icon. Thank you. From Icon Construction LLC for bridges 28,520, 28,521, 28,523. Brian.
Commissioners. We quoted out some bridge maintenance work. We had a couple contractors submit quotes. We quoted out 4 bridges for the county and 3 in the township system. The townships have accepted those 3 bridges, and we would like to accept Icon Constructors LLC for the 3 bridges mentioned. There's one more bridge that we're going to reject due to not having enough in the budget for it. So, and that was bridge 28,512 that we are going to reject or recommend rejecting.
Where's that one?
Right. It's on County 6. So CSA 6 west of La Crescent. It's by the driving range, close to the Nome County line.
Oh, over by, Gades and Weezer.
Is it the one that's on County 6, or is it the one that goes north to 16?
No, it's right on County 6.
The one on County 6.
Yeah,
Gates
it's-
place.
It's kind
Yeah,
of a curve.
west of Evans Hill by a couple miles.
Yep.
Right before Pfeffer Valley Road.
No,
No.
well, no,
Or
no.
Foster.
Foster Road, yeah.
Foster Road.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, just before Foster.
Yes.
I misspoke Pfeffer.
Yep.
Any
Okay.
more
So
questions?
what was why is that so much higher?
It's the condition of the structure and what we were looking to do on it. We wanted to do a flood seal on the deck where essentially you're sealing the whole deck surface.
Yeah.
Due to the condition of that deck, along with resurfacing the bridge railing and everything out there. That bridge alone was about 40% of our entire bridge maintenance budget. So we just had to toss it out, and then next year we'll look at trying to get that
Back in.
next year, maybe doing something a little bit different, but getting it back in.
Okay.
Otherwise, Icon was relatively close on budget.
Yeah, and we did have a second bidder that bid as well. They bid components of the bid. They didn't want to do certain aspects of our quotes and stuff. So we evaluated it both ways, and what they wanted to leave off, it just wasn't what we wanted. So
So Farner.
Move to approve the Icon Construction Bridge quotes for 28/5/20, 28/5/21, and 28/5/23.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the quotes for Icon. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes. Got 2 minutes to get one more done. Consider action.
Well,
You want to
this one might take a while.
Yep, second.
So maybe we should,
Okay.
if, as long as the gentleman's here, can we start or?
Yeah, I think so.
Right away.
Yeah, put you on hold for a while. Go down and have lunch.
It's on our dime.
Come on up there, sir. I don't know your name right offhand.
I'm Blake Luna, representative from Nomi, company based in the St. Louis. Donna asked that I come today, talk a little bit about security in the poll books and answer whatever questions you guys might have in regards to the software and the system. So, Donna, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. I think you have to give me the ability to do so, but I'll try anyways.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Mike.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I've got a very short 4-slide presentation here to kind of prompt the discussion about security. If at any point I'm going too fast or too slow or too much detail or too little, please let me know. As you guys know, we're Nomi. We're based here in the United States, based in St. Louis, Missouri. We've been in existence for about a decade now, in earnest for somewhere in the neighborhood of the last 7 or 8 years, specifically in the state of Minnesota. We started up in Hennepin County, Crow Wing County, and have since blossomed to the majority of the state over the course of the last couple of years. So you will see, if you look across the state, the majority of the counties here in Minnesota are using our system and have been using it for a number of years. So, a lot of references out there for you can find it. But from a security standpoint, just a couple of bullet points here. Just to be noted, everything that we do is developed 100% in the United States by background checked individuals. We don't contract out overseas. All of our code, all of our infrastructure, everything related to our software, support people across the board, all here in the United States. And obviously, background checks before they come on board. Everything we do is off-the-shelf encryption and security tools. So we tend to think that security is a complicated thing to get right. So we don't presume that we know how to build encryption and all of that sort of stuff ourselves, right? So we basically use the best-in-class encryption that's available through Apple, Amazon Web Services, all of the various libraries inside the system to make sure that the data as it's being transferred is appropriately encrypted, and we're staying on top of updates and all of that sort of stuff to make sure we're extensively tested by federal, state, local, and private entities. So we do a lot of business with DHS, Department of Homeland Security, CISA. We're constantly being pen tested, security tested, all that sort of stuff. With those groups from a federal standpoint, for most state certifications, we also go through security testing, lab testing, code reviews, all of that sort of stuff. So we're very involved with CISA and the DHS, more so over the last couple of years, obviously, because of what's been going on. They've become very involved, and we work very closely with them. Very, very much hand in hand from an intrusion detection and a best practices standpoint. They're constantly kind of poking around at us to see if they can get at it. And we're currently in the middle of a SOC 2 audit, which is a compliance audit from a security standpoint that we're doing to get that accreditation to ensure that we are basically at the highest level of security possible at that SOC 2 scale. So any questions about any of that?
So is this recent that you got tested by a federal, state, and local?
Yeah, I think the last one that we did federal level was October of last year, August of last year, somewhere in that area. State testing is ongoing currently in California and the state of New York. We just got through certification through a federally certified lab for Indiana, Tennessee, Ohio, Virginia, Texas, Alabama, I think was a part of that. So yeah, these tests are pretty much ongoing year round.
Is there some states and counties that have quit using them?
I mean, we have, almost 1,200 clients across the country. There's certainly been clients that have, gone to other vendors at various points in time. That's just the nature of the business. I would feel very confident saying that there's never been a client that has moved away from us for security issues or anything like this. And we have some very large contracts out there, the city of New York, Los Angeles County, the entire state of Georgia, but 175 of the 200 and some odd. And most, if not all, of the state of New York as well, along with New York City, Washington, D.C., so we're in some pretty large areas. And obviously, Minneapolis.
Well, if there hasn't been any moved away because of security reasons, is there some that have moved away because of glitches and slowing up the process of voting?
There have been instances where I'm trying to think of specific ones where they've moved specifically because of that. I can't think of any. That's not to say that they don't exist. As with any software, there's going to be opportunities to do it wrong, for lack of a better term. And not all clients are necessarily equipped to do it and succeed at it. That's where our support team and such comes into play. And like I said, we've got over 1,000 plus counties and jurisdictions across the country now. Definitely the leader when it comes to this market segment. And feel that we have a very stable product that is user friendly to people.
In the last election in 2020, looked like there was a couple, 3 counties like in Texas and Ohio, and in Georgia that moved away from it because of glitches in the system, and it caused delays in voting, and they had to extend voting hours because of it.
Yeah, and as far as I know, outside of the 3 counties in Texas, I'm not 100% sure. But I know Franklin County in Ohio is still a client, and those counties in Georgia are still a client too. Have a statewide contract.
DeKalb County. DeKalb County still has a contract.
Do it.
DeKalb.
Yes. Yep. So the 3 instances in Texas were configuration issues that they had, which caused syncing issues when they turned their pads on in the morning. They tried to get the data down onto them. They had a mistake and it didn't work, and it did cause delays, and there were extended hours and polls. The nice part about our system is we were able to remedy that in the field and get them up and running fairly quickly after that. Right?
Hey, excuse me, Blake, could you mind just sitting down by the speakers? Because it's kind of hard to hear you without the speakers.
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
it's a little muffled. There you go.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry.
No, that's all right.
You say configuration, I guess I'm confused on what that meant when they changed configuration.
Yeah, so, there's any number of ways you can configure our system to work, right? There is a very prescribed way, depending on what jurisdiction you're in, what state you're in, what state laws you're accustomed to or, beholden to, I guess, more than anything, that things need to be configured. And that wasn't done appropriately in some of those counties in Texas. Franklin County, Ohio simply had a hardware issue where they actually ran out of memory on their hardware because of the massive scale of the 2020 election. And then Georgia, I don't remember the nature of those issues. I would have to get back to you on a direct answer on those.
So like in Minnesota, we have same day registration. So a person comes to vote and they need to register, and they're not in the roster. They're not, they would be just the information we put in the roster.
Mhm.
How's it done with poll pads?
Funnily enough, we kind of developed our whole same day registration system because of the state of Minnesota. Like it was one of the first places back in 2016, 2015, where we really did same day registration. So it was built specifically, at least at the time, and has obviously been modified since then for other jurisdictions, but for use here in the state of Minnesota. But there's essentially just a form-like process that you go through on the poll pad. You can scan a person's ID to get their information if they'd like to give it that way, or you can just type it into the poll book. A receipt gets printed, which is essentially the replaces the regular paper form you would typically fill out that they sign. So there is a paper backup along with an electronic record. Those electronic records are obviously stored on the poll book. You also have your paper receipt if you need them. And then after the fact, we send the data back to the state to create those records within the voter registration system here in Minnesota.
Okay. So at the polling, go ahead, Donna.
I'll just gonna say, correct me if I'm wrong, Blake, we don't have to upload that information from that same day registration until we get to the county, correct? We can do it when we get back to the county and it will upload just fine.
Yeah, that's a matter of business and however you guys want to handle it. But yeah, that is correct.
Well, that was one of my next question was, because if the local polling places will have a printer to do that, but this is going to be done at the county level, Donna?
Yes, but like when you say printer to print the receipt? Or
Correct.
what? Yeah,
So that receipt isn't going to get to the individual. We won't be able to give it to anybody if it comes to the county, correct?
no, the receipt is printed. There's a little receipt printer with each iPad, with each poll pad. And it's a really small receipt printer. It looks just kind of like a little small box, and it's all synced in with the poll pad. And the only way that will work is they're all numbered, so they're the same number as the iPad. So then that receipt, everyone gets a receipt. When you sign on the poll pad, the receipt prints out, and that's what you give to the voter or to the person at the registration desk or the judge to get your ballot.
Okay.
Yep, so that the receipt is excuse me, is what they will count. The judges will count at the end of the night to match how many voters they've had that day coming to the polling place. Am I correct on that? Like,
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can do it, and that would certainly be just fine.
So if there's a lot of different ways to do it, so so that would be Donna's call to decide how they want to do it and how to train it for training?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, since we've been in the state for a number of years, I mean, we've got some suggestions and best practices that we've seen work in other places, right? But ultimately, it's Houston County's decision on how they want to deploy the system and operate it and audit it and all that sort of stuff.
Just, I'm going to ask, is it user-friendly for some of our local polling folks to work with, and it's adaptable as the clerk would set up for them?
I mean, we like to think so. We think that that's sort of what separated us from our competitors is the usability of the product. It's very streamlined. It's built in with kind of tips and tricks along the way that you can put in there to remind them what to do. And it's very easy to train with. So those, I think, are really the strengths of the product, is really the usability of it, because it is designed with, older poll workers in mind, that sort of stuff.
A couple other the main concerns that we hear, the paper trail. So the receipts are the paper trail for the system.
Yeah.
The other common question is it hooked to the internet? Is it hooked to the internet?
It can, it would be up to Houston County's decision whether you wanted to have it hooked to the internet during active polling or not. Doesn't have to be. It works completely isolated off of the internet if need be. The only time that it would be hooked to the internet is to actually load the data onto the iPads themselves, which will be done here in Houston County, assume, under a secure network that you manage.
So that data would be coming from the Secretary of State, correct, Donna? To load the iPads for the roster?
correct. Yeah, but it's all, it'll all be on a secured Just anything else, just like anything else we do at the county, uploading anything, it'll be the same. So it's gonna be on a secure basis. I know, I just wanted to make one comment. I have learned that Fillmore County is hooked up to the internet with their poll pads at the polling places, whereas Winona County is not. Winona County uploads everything at the county. Fillmore County is connected during the polling place hours so they can talk back and forth. The county and the poll pads can talk back and forth, but I at this time, I don't think I'll choose to do that. I'm gonna go with uploading everything at the county.
Yeah, and I think that would be a good idea, Don. I mean, I think at the scale at which you're talking, at least until you get more comfortable with the system and potentially revisit that down the line, I think you keep it as simple as possible, and that makes sense.
Do all of our polling places even have internet?
No,
So you'd want to keep it consistent.
Yeah, you would probably have to supply a device, a county-owned managed device, if that's what you want to do.
And can you touch a little bit, Blake, maybe this is something we don't have to be too concerned about, but I think I've talked to some of those people at No Ink that have told me that even if we don't use the internet, like for same-day registration, that we make the hotspots. Is that something that you can touch on or explain to the listeners?
Using hotspots for same-day registration, is that what you're saying?
Right, do you need that for, I mean, what would that be for?
No, that wouldn't that wouldn't be required. I mean, the hotspots or the internet connectivity in the polling places is useful in the sense that it allows those devices to talk to our servers, and then we can disseminate that information to the rest of the poll books across the county, right? So the way that they're built currently is, if I'm sitting in a polling location, I have 3 of them on a table, right? They're talking to each other internally without the internet through Bluetooth. So that way that person can't come here and check in and then come here and check in. They're all consistent across the board, right? The internet allows you to broaden that consistency to the rest of your polling locations so that somebody can vote at the church as a same-day registrant and then walk over to the library, for example, and their name not be on the book, right? If you had internet in place, it would actually preclude them. They would be already on the book in the library as having voted as a same-day registrant, right? Now there's processes and procedures and, depending on the counties in Minnesota, how they handle it when it's not connected, which is essentially the same as a paper roster, right? It's basically the same thing. So that's really the only benefit of having that connectivity is the consistency across the county of the data set, right? Plus it allows Donna to be able to see what's going on. Oh, they're busy over here, they're not busy over there. They've had 100 people who maybe we need some more ballots out there, that sort of stuff.
So like, if we, like, this is what we normally do even the paper roster. If someone comes in, or if we receive a ballot on the day of election, and we would just keep track of which polling places they belong to, and then we would call the polling places to tell them that this person has already voted. So they would they would have to enter that into the poll pad that person has voted, correct? That's what we would do. If we received a ballot the day of the election, we would notify the polling place right away and tell them that the person has voted.
You're talking about absentee ballots?
Correct. And if we didn't have, if we, once we get that absentee ballot in, we enter it into SVRS, and if we don't have internet connection, we'll have to notify the polling place that person has voted. I mean,
that would be another benefit of having connectivity in the polling locations, is you can get updates from Donna as things change. Right?
Well, we would do that anyway. We would do that anyway, even with the paper roster, we'd have to do that.
Yeah.
Because that's how we would notify that.
Right. So it would be no. Yeah, because you do that with the general roster. So what I'm just thinking off the top of my head here is, what is the advantage of the polling pad at some of these rural voting polls if we don't have internet. We're gonna have to do that kind of work anyway, but what, with electronics and everything else, there's gonna be mistakes. An address is rented, entered wrong, or there's a glitch somehow. What happens then to that? What do we say to that voter that for whatever reason you're not in the system, or we can't find you in the polling pad? What do we do then?
Yeah, so I mean, it just depends on what the nature of the problem is, obviously. Generally speaking, electronic poll books have increased accuracy of elections because you're allowing the technology to do the sorting of the data, right? So you don't have to flip through a book anymore to try to find somebody. They can scan an ID and it'll immediately find them if they're in there, right?
So we could require an ID for people
You
to,
don't have to require one. If they offer one, you
it
can.
would be helpful, correct?
Yeah, but that's up to you guys on how you want to, support it or roll it out. But that's how it works.
So that it's set up so somebody could swipe their driver's license and then it would, and
There's a,
we could
there's a
require
small
that as a
tray.
county.
Yeah, there's a small tray that's hooked onto the poll pad that the person can put their ID in, and it's supposed to read the information on their ID to enter it into the poll pad.
So we
That's
could
practical.
make that a requirement for voting in the county.
We can't unless it's state legislation. We can't force anybody to give us their ID.
Okay.
You don't want to eliminate the people that don't have an ID.
Right.
Yeah.
And what happens often, so you, Mr. Johnson, you mentioned that if someone doesn't come up on the poll pad, there's a reason for that, because usually they're in the wrong place.
Right.
Yeah, they're in the wrong polling place, or they have moved. They moved and they've forgotten that they moved. Not really, I mean, it doesn't dawn on them. They're like, say, for instance, a person's in a township and they're like moved to town. And they think, well, I still got a farm in my township. I should be able to vote. And they get upset because their name's not on the roster or on the poll pad. But in generally speaking, they have changed their address and they are really in a different precinct.
Right. That's why we always ask anyway what their address is, to make sure they're voting in the right precinct.
Correct.
Or you get annexed into the city and now you're no longer going out to the town hall or something like that.
Right.
But
That happens
the
very
information,
often.
the information that's loaded into the poll pads is only as good as what's put into it from the state. And, a lot of times that's not 100% either. So, but
It's like the paper ones are the same way.
yep.
Yeah. Can the connection between, say I go to the wrong polling place and can I tell them all my address is, can they connect to the other polling places and tell me that, hey, I need to go over there because the city of La Crescent, where they have 3 precincts because of redistricting and all that kind of stuff, will you be able to tell me from this computer that I need to go to that computer?
Yes.
Okay. So it's
If they're
beneficial.
connected.
They don't have to be connected, because essentially what happens is we
They're-
load,
They're Bluetooth connected.
yeah, they're connected via Bluetooth, but we load all of the address information for the entire county for the same radio registration purposes. So if you walked in and said, well, I live at 123 Main Street, but I don't know where I want to vote, I can type in 123 Main Street and it should tell me where it is you're supposed to be voting. And I can either send you a text message, or only button if we're not connected. I can print a receipt, hand it to you and say you're supposed to go here. Or we actually do load the entire voter rolls for the county on every single iPad. So I should be able to find your record and it should say, you're in the wrong location. This is where you need to go.
So Donna, for Fillmore County, do they just use it in the cities? Because all the townships vote by mail, don't they?
Fillmore County?
Yep.
They have a lot of them, but I don't know if all of them do, Eric. I'm not real sure.
Okay. I know that county where I picked up that machine. Can't think of the county, but that auto mark. She told me that all the cities use the poll pad, but all the townships are vote by mail. So that's why it really worked well for them, because, you know, the bigger cities use it, and then they
Sure.
run it through the township elections are run through the county.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not, I know they did a couple, when I started in 18, as the auditor, I went up to visit Fillmore and they had a lot of them at that time. There were mail-in ballots, but I'm not sure what they have today. I could check it
Yeah,
out.
I know a lot of them are. I don't know if they all are, but that's a question we'll have to find out.
Mhm. And I know, like, we were talking about finding somebody, in the paper world, we just use a precinct finder. So we'd have paper precinct finder to find that person's real polling place. You know, that's what we do in the paper world, but with the poll pads, we could find it right on the poll pad then, according to, Blake here.
So if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is if the poll pads were connected to the internet in all the polling places, that would be the best case scenario as far as be able to communicate with everything.
It just depends on what your goals are. Because there are downsides to that too, right? Because that's another piece of equipment you have to manage. You have to find a hotspot, you have to provide connectivity where you don't have it.
Mhm.
That's one more thing for the county to pay for, one more thing to troubleshoot on election day. You know, so it's not an overwhelmingly, you know, it's not a decision you don't make without thinking about it, right?
Mhm.
But if your goal is to have the most insight as possible and the most consistent data as humanly possible, and the easiest way to recover from any, you know, problem that might happen in the field, the connectivity is the thing that allows you to do those things.
Mhm.
It's not a requirement though. And I know for a number of years in Minnesota, we didn't have connectivity across polling places and it worked just fine.
Or most of them are now.
You know, I don't know. I know that it started to turn about 2018-ish. When some of the larger counties came on, like Wright County, and obviously Hennepin have been pushing for it for quite some time. And some of those more metro Dakota, when those came on, I think we started to see a bit more connectivity. They just have so many more locations, a lot more information to track, you know, all of that stuff.
And they're all internet connected.
I mean, you can even buy, what I think is the best solution for a county that wants to have connectivity is to buy a cellular iPad. So it essentially has its own cellular, it's like a giant cell phone, right? So you don't have a separate piece of hardware, it's dedicated to the iPad itself. Now, there's cost involved in that. That is, to me, the most elegant solution to that problem.
So our maintenance costs, Donna, for these iPads or poll pads, basically iPads, aren't they? What is the, what is the, go ahead.
$125 per poll pad is what the
Okay.
maintenance cost is.
And they need to be updated every election, every 2 years, correct, or what?
Actually, the maintenance cost is $125 a poll pad each year.
Each year.
Yeah, just to maintain them. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's irrespective of the hardware, right? So you're gonna buy your iPads, and that hardware, depending on what generation iPad you buy, will last you somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 6 years, depending on what happens in the world and how fast Apple wants to make iPads and all that sort of stuff, right? So you're gonna have an initial investment in the hardware itself, and then what she's describing is the cost for the actual licensing of the software to put on it.
So what's the cost of the hardware?
That I don't know. I'm pretty far removed from that right now.
That'd be something Andy would know.
So what
Yeah.
is the life of these poll pads? What would be the lifespan of the normal poll pad?
So just as a for example, the Apple Air One, I think was built in like 2014,
Isn't that what we got?
20 something. It just got retired by Apple last year. So that was about 7 years. Now, I wouldn't tell anybody to run an election on an Apple Air One from a security and performance standpoint, but it was still working.
Mhm.
And for people who couldn't, upgrade and do whatever they needed to do, it was still a functional piece of it. So Apple will eventually start retiring older hardware because they want to protect their own ecosystem. They want to make sure that Apple doesn't end up in the news by having old hardware, right? And that usually happens about 6 years is what a standard model is.
Oh, we bought these in 2018 or 2019, Donna? 2019,
We bought
some of them.
10 of them in 2019 and then the rest of them, we now have 33. So we bought 23 in 2020.
Do you know what models they were?
I can't even tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Andy told me they're the cheapies, whatever that means. They're just the basics. God, I can't remember the name you used to call them, but
If you bought them in 2020, they're probably fairly recent. So
he said they're like a $500 iPad.
yeah, I would be surprised if they would cost that much. We get a pretty good deal through Apple just based on the scale that we sell them at, and plus it's a government contract, so we usually get them much cheaper than that.
Well, I've asked a lot of questions only because I get this from the public, and there's been, you can't turn on the news and not hear about security concerns. And so we're going to get it, especially if, comes to training time and voting time. So we need to be open and transparent and express everybody's concerns to what's going on here. And so.
Yeah, and we're obviously, willing to support whatever questions that may arise, I mean, we've gotten them all, over the course of the last handful of years. And, we like to say that 2020 was the most accurate and secure election that we have as a company has ever run, which is very different than what the narrative is of the election process in the public, right? We have the information. We're the ones that administered the system, right? We knew what happened with it. There was just that's the biggest problem in elections is the lack of accurate information. I mean, even in a county like Houston County, there can be things going on inside polling places that you'll never get a straight answer about, ever, so that's what this system tries to do, is it tries to give the administrators a window into what's happening inside polling locations by being able to track who's voting, when they're voting, how many people are voting, all of that sort of stuff, right? It's a very basic step towards having a little bit more understanding and control of what is actually happening in an election in the county. That comes with, the talking points as far as, is it connected to the internet? Is it all? iOS, which is an Apple system. The devices themselves are managed through an MDM provided by Cisco. Again, more talk about encryption as far as the encryption of the data as it's in transit from an iPad to our servers or wherever it needs to
That's what
go.
I'll say is.
And then the
Hey,
John, you're not muted.
John, you have to mute.
Sorry, I got.
Right. This is a very high level diagram of how the system kind of works. We sort of discussed this. This is the polling location down here at the bottom where they're talking to each other, right? And then if you choose to have a wireless router inside your location, you'll see the traffic is completely encrypted across the board. Anywhere that data is moving, whether it be through the Bluetooth or through the internet, it's all encrypted at a level that is considered industry standard. And again, those are the type of things that DHS and CISA and counties will specifically try to monitor that traffic to see if they can view what's going on, and it's all encrypted to a degree that it's not.
So just in looking at that diagram,
Mhm.
if we didn't have the poll pads,
Yep.
everything is done by hand.
Paper.
They got it on paper.
Yeah.
And
And you
then
have
the
a paper.
has to be carried through to where it's put by all together in the general information and then that information. So by using the poll pads, you're eliminating
Paper.
the paper part.
Yeah, and you're eliminating mistakes. I don't know if this applies to a county like Houston County, but you're eliminating overhead because you're gonna have to have people doing something with that paper when it comes back here. They're gonna have to physically go through each page and scan those things in, right? In this instance, it's a one-person job. Donna can just do it, right?
I mean, you don't eliminate all mistakes.
Sure.
As far as whoever's putting in a new address, and if they put in a wrong number, it's gonna be messed up, but
The goal is to make it more accurate.
I guess this might be a premature question or whatever. How is your fee determined? Is it, because we're not gonna pay the same amount as Hennepin County because of size, is it a base plus so much of
It's
Load?
just on a per unit basis.
per diem,
Per unit.
per unit, I'm sorry.
Hennepin County, I think, has 2,500 of these things roughly now, so they're paying per unit, obviously. For a county like this, I think she said you've got like 30 currently, I don't know if you need more. And then this is the last slide, this is just the AWS or the administrative side, where the data is basically. Some of the technologies that we use and that sort of stuff.
so in regard to La Crescent, 3 precincts. Is there one poll pad for each precinct then?
Donna, is that the case?
No, not necessarily, because the bigger, larger precincts like La Crescent will probably have 2 to 3 poll pads. Like precinct 1 for sure. Precinct 2 will probably have at least 2 poll pads, maybe 3. Because it also like really cuts down on the lines, if there's lines, because they can go to, maybe 3 poll pads open, especially if somebody's registering that day. So the larger precincts will have at least 2, maybe 3 poll pads per precinct.
So Don, a question with regard to that. If we were doing paper,
Yep,
want to do 1 book at each precinct and they'd have to go through that book?
correct.
So this way you're speeding up the
Mhm.
time for voting because of having 3 poll pads instead of 1 book that they gotta go to.
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
Right.
And like Spring Grove City, they're pretty busy. Caledonia is busy, so Caledonia especially too will need at least 2 poll pads.
2 per precinct.
Yep.
Well, there's only-
per precinct.
There's only 2 precincts.
There's only,
And
well,
if we-
it's township and city, right? There's
And
no,
the city has 2 precincts.
they do have 2 precincts? Okay. I didn't know.
Yep. Caledonia has 2 precincts. Spring Grove only has 1. Well, I shouldn't say 1. No, they've got 2. No, 3, because in the same polling place, because they've got Spring Grove Township, Spring Grove City, and Black Hammer Township. So they have 3 different precincts in the same polling place. So that would speed things up.
So who all votes in Caledonia? Caledonia Township is with the city when they,
No.
at the polling place?
No, they got their own.
Right.
They got their own? Okay.
They're in the same building, but it's their own deal.
Well, I know, but that's what I'm asking. They're at the same polling place.
Yeah.
Caledonia Township, Mayville Township, and the city of Caledonia are all in the other.
Yeah, they're the one,
Okay.
they're just, they,
Yep.
they
Just
The
look-
like it
city
is in
itself
Houston.
has 2 precincts.
But the city
and then
itself
those
has
are the
2,
other
and then they
side.
have the townships.
Yeah.
They'll have different tables.
Yep.
separated.
Yep,
So, I
yep,
mean,
And in normal circumstance, commissioners, like Caledonia Township would have their own roster, paper
Pad, yeah.
roster. Yeah, so they would all have their own paper roster anyway.
Right. Everybody has their own roster.
Mhm. Yeah,
Because down Eitzen there, we got Wilmington and Eitzen and Winnebago, all three, correct?
correct. Mhm.
That'd be appreciated.
Any more questions for him?
Thank you for coming and explaining this a little better, because we are being asked about it.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and
appreciate
there's
it.
always a fear of the unknown.
Yeah,
Well, it's something new and, you know,
Everybody's used to paper.
everybody's used to paper and in a lot of cases, there's nothing wrong with paper.
Other than the timing. From the perspective of having to write it and how long it takes to get that done comparison to having extra input. Is it hard to learn how to use these? I mean, we've got a lot of our judges and whatnot are, might be like me, kind of flip phony kind of. Is this, well, you know,
I gotta use the rules.
And that's gonna be, yeah, go ahead, Bob.
that's an issue. I mean, is this easy to learn for them to input the information?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I'm a little biased because I work for the system, but I believe our UI is very intuitive. I mean, the one thing that is interesting is you see, I mean, almost everyone has an iPad or an iPhone at this point. You know, so people are very comfortable with the iPad itself as a technology device. You know, you're not putting like a laptop in front of them or anything else. People, generally speaking, you know, are very comfortable with Apple products. And the usability of Apple is why Apple is Apple, right? And again, like I'll go back to the fact that we've been deploying basically the same system in the state of Minnesota for 5-6 years. It's been very well refined, so all the workflows are very straightforward. You know, Don will have a ton of support from the other auditors and county clerks and such, as far as, okay, here's how you train it well, you know, Bob, you know, here are the problems that we had, all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, is it's a repeatable, what you're asking the poll workers to do is repeat a handful of processes, right? Register, check in a good voter, register somebody, tell somebody they're not in the book, right? And those things are very formulaically done in our software, so that like after you've done it 2 or 3 times, like it just starts to make sense, right? Like there's no outs, you can't really screw it up. I mean, you can, but it's really hard to, you know? So I think that is, like I said earlier, I think that's the strength of our system and why we've sold it at the scale that we have, is the usability of it specifically. You know, New York City doesn't, they're New York City, right? They're always a little itchy about something, but the one thing that they will always say to us is it's the poll workers love it and it's very easy to train.
Oh, good.
So Noink does the training for this, or does the Secretary of State do the training?
Well, Donna would ultimately do the training.
Right, but I mean, they're
Training.
getting their training material from the Secretary of State or from you?
That's a good question. We would probably, I'm sure that we have at this point like a standard Minnesota training package that we would provide her from us specifically. Now, there is a process that the state requires that she go through to make sure that whatever poll book system that she purchases meets their standard, right? Which we've been certified by the state, and then she kind of has to recertify occasionally, through her own processes. But I don't think that they give out any specific training materials, but they do lay out the framework of what should be done on the poll book. So she can kind of use that.
Last question for me. With regard to absentee ballots. So somebody does an absentee ballot and sends it in. And then they come in and vote, but the absentee ballot comes in, doesn't get processed till after. Then that's easily caught.
Yeah, so we should mark in the poll book at the state of the ballot. So if they have been issued a ballot, they will appear, and I guess this will be a matter of your guys' process and what Donna wants to do, but they can appear in the book as an absentee voter, right? And then depending on if that ballot has been received back, actually physically returned, or if it's still just out in the ether, you can do one of two things. You can either allow them to surrender their ballot in the polling place if they have it with them, allow them to vote, or you can just make a hard stop and says anybody who's been issued an absentee ballot does not get to vote in a polling location.
Okay.
And they have to maybe pick up the phone and call or whatever, right? But that's a decision for Donna to make and how she wants to set up her process.
But that avoids the duplication vote then.
Right.
Well, in the papered roster, it usually comes up absentee ballot issue.
Right.
And so,
I'm just saying that,
but it's not, it hasn't been received yet. But I think that, Donna would know this for sure, but if it's been sent out, I think that's an automatic gets flagged as a sent out absentee. And it's in the roster as such.
and I've talked to people that get the absentee ballot, decide they don't want to do it, and they come in personally to vote.
Yeah, that's an issue.
So. But that'd be an issue whether it's paper or whether it's,
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true.
And
this would be easier to catch it on here than it would be on paper.
Yeah, and ultimately, like, you do have the right to. That's
Yeah,
not
I
the right thing. They're breaking the law by doing that,
Yeah, that happens real often.
Go ahead, Donna.
Yeah, that happens real often. People will request an absentee ballot and then they won't accept it or they won't use it. So they come to the polling place, and as long as they haven't turned that ballot in, it is, it wouldn't show that on the poll pad, so they would be able to vote. Now, if they went back home and they decided, oh, I'm gonna use my absentee ballot and sent it to us, as soon as we pulled their name up in the SVRS, we would know that they've already voted. So there's no way they'd be able to vote again.
And no one else is allowed to use that ballot either, are they?
No.
Technically.
Yeah, it's technically.
There'd have to be a name associated with it. And if that person's already voted, and they'd have to be in the right, that ballot can't be used if you're not in the right precinct. We would know because the ballots are all marked with precinct numbers.
Okay, yep.
If you try to use somebody from Caledonia, we go, what are you doing? Mr. Johnson, we would probably have to call you.
So what about ballot harvesting? As far as like a nursing home? Can somebody get all the people in the nursing home's names and come and ask for absentee ballots?
Usually there's certain people that are assigned by the city that we work with. We help train. We guide them along as to and we teach them how to handle that. There's a certain procedure, and they would get the names of the people who want to. They would fill out the absentee applications for those people, and then they would bring them up to us and ask for their ballots to be mailed. And we usually just mail them to the nursing homes if they want absentee ballots. Or I guess that's the procedure that I'm familiar with, and the cities usually handle that themselves.
Okay.
We have certain people who they work with certain judges to take care of that. Their own judges from the cities.
I just asked from the perspective of an actual independent vote, rather than they get a pile of votes that they can, a
No,
pile of ballots that they can vote a certain way, whether the individual's capable of voting or not. You know what I mean?
yeah, usually the judges kind of determine, you
Up to
know,
the judges, okay.
yeah, the judges determine that.
If you've been
All right.
The judges have
following
to
Wisconsin.
Then,
Any more questions for this man? And we can let him go if you were all done. Thank you for coming, sir.
thank you, Blake.
Thank you much,
Pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Very much.
If anybody has any more questions, they can send them to me and I can probably send them to you. Would that work?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you could make
After that
copies of
fact?
your, yep, appreciate it.
Okay, Brian, you're up.
Thank you, Blake.
Thank you. All right, number 3, consider action to vacate the portion of the existing right-of-way. Landowner has requested the county to vacate a portion of County State Aid Highway 3 right-of-way within the city of Brownsville.
So this is County State Highway 3, it's within the city of Brownsville. But when you actually drive into Brownsville from the Caledonia direction, it is right on the north side of CASA 3, west of Corcalo. So it kind of has a little bit more of a rural feel to it, but it's still within the city limits. The landowner that this would back a couple decades ago, the county purchased some land for a road reconstruction project out there. Rebuilt the road. All the land north of the old road center line belonged to one landowner. South of that old center line belonged to another. Since that time, some land has changed hands. Right now what there's a parcel between Corcalo as it goes off to the north and veers to the west. And CASA 3, there's a parcel that is a small parcel that as it sits today, it'd be very difficult to build anything of size on that. This vacated land would go to the landowner that owns the land on the south side of the highway. So this landowner ultimately would get his own sliver of land on the north side of the highway, and then he could either keep it as himself, or he can sell to the other landowner on the north side. So this request is actually coming from, in some ways from the current landowner and the person who'd like to develop this land both on the north side. So it's land, like I said, the county bought a couple decades ago. We bought land to reconstruct the roadway. What that land used to be, go off the roadway, you have a ditch, and then you had a big back slope. So the right of way was 150 feet out, some areas 160 feet and beyond. Because we need to have that land to cut that back slope in there. Ultimately, anything on the backside of that ditch, we probably won't need for any highway purposes in the future. So is the county willing to vacate this land that is on that slope or was on that slope? Now, I will say that that land has been disturbed by the landowner out there or by the adjacent landowner. Already, he's taken that back slope and he's cut it down and kind of made it flatter. Do I see a county need for this area in the future? Probably not. If anything, when the roads shift and you rebuild them, usually they shift toward the inside of the curve. If the curve gets flattened out for a higher speed. I don't see us needing to go beyond 70 feet, so I don't really see a county need for that area at this time. However, it is land that the county bought, we purchased, we want to get land back for free that we paid to have. This would be the second parcel of land vacated by the county if we do this in about a year's time. The other one was over by Casas 17. There was another landowner that contacted the highway department here just yesterday and said, you know, is this kind of the county's new process? Are you willing to give back land like this all over the place? So we have land further up the road on County 3. I'd maybe benefit by vacating the land along my parcel too. But it might not be in the county's best interest, and that's for you know, you guys and myself to make that decision as far as what we want to do as far as vacating. So you know, that question has been put out there on do we want to you know, vacate this land, and how does that play into future requests? So like I said, overall for this parcel, I don't see that the county would have a defined need for it in the future. If it was outside the city limits, this back slope would have been undevelopable. It would have been in that slope that the county's zoning ordinances won't allow it to be disturbed for development. Being within the city limits, they don't have that same restrictions, so that does make it a developable piece of land. So the options is either, you know, vacate it, keep it, or vacate a portion of it.
Can we give just a right of way?
What was that?
Can we do a right of way?
That already is a right of way.
Is that what it is? It's right now, that's what it is, a right of way?
Yeah. So currently, the right of way map, and I can pull it up on the screen if you want. So currently we have 70 foot of right of way on the north side of the roadway as we leave town. We get into this parcel and it jumps out to 150 feet. And that's that portion that we're looking at vacated towards 150 feet, and actually jumps back to 160 feet right by the property line. We're looking at vacating that outside 80 feet, and at the very far west side 90 feet of the current right of way. And then we would retain 70 foot in width of right of way to the north side of the center line. Typical county right of way would be, you know, 33 to 50 feet. We do have some areas where it's 200 feet plus. In the county.
So with regard to this right of way, long slope on it before it was disturbed, which dealt with one of the construction needs and the slope that we wanted coming down to the highway for what runoff and whatnot. Like, is this going to change the runoff as far as cutting it down, putting up structures and whatnot, and cause any issue as far as the runoff that's coming down to the county ditch?
The county ditch is capable of handling more water in this location. Would it change the runoff? The slope itself, not drastically. The change going from previously was wooded, now it's open land, and since they go put gravel on and buildings, absolutely that increased the runoff by a factor of 3 or 4. Now by Minnesota MPCA regulations, they're not able to increase their runoff. They have limitations of what they can do on any disturbance over 1 acre. And this is a parcel that they've disturbed over 1 acre. So as long as they submit for proper permitting and comply with all the state regulations, it will not increase cause any real change in runoff. Said our ditch ultimately has capability. There is a small culvert underneath Core Color Road. There's an 18-inch culvert that probably could handle that runoff. It was a 15-inch size, so it has the capacity.
And when we acquired this, we bought it. Is it typical that we buy land and then give it away after we're done with it?
As far as I'm aware, I'm only aware of a couple instances in the county where we've actually vacated right away. So typically, once we buy it, we do keep it.
Well, we keep
We
it
keep
for a
the
reason.
right away.
We keep it for a reason. If we feel that we need to retain it, we keep it. But that one we just did a year ago.
Yeah, we don't actively seek locations to vacate it.
It only comes up when someone buys a piece of property, wants to build on a piece of property. is when it comes up in a situation like that, right?
Yeah, typically it's because it comes up because they have a purpose for it, so.
Well, the one a year ago was because the road changed. It was in one place, we moved the road, so that big corner, we didn't need the big corner anymore because the road wasn't through there.
And this road
Yeah.
changed too, correct?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and a lot of times when we do keep it, when they do get wider like that, a lot of times it is because their road would change on a curve. And when you look at those instances, I would say probably 9 out of 10 times, if you vacate that old right of way, there'll be some that become landlocked, that they no longer have access to the new roadway. In this case, any type of shift is not creating a landlocked parcel. So, vacating it's not, we're not prevented from vacating it now if we don't, or if we want to vacate it, we could.
Does this have any bearing on Cork Hollow Road as far as its right of way? If that got changed as far as the way it comes into County Highway 3 or something, it doesn't have any bearing on that.
Just dig it out down there.
It's on the other side though.
Yeah.
Typically, when you purchase land for redesign, you might get extra just to be prepared for design issues. And then this is kind of maybe what happened back in '98.
Yeah, so back when this was purchased, Houston County was purchasing land at essentially in blocks that were perpendicular or parallel to the highway. So everything was purchased. So you go out to the 50 feet, 70 feet, 150 feet plus, and it was all purchased to create this slope. And that was bought generally when you're creating those slopes, you're buying it in fee title or permanent easement. Just because you're changing the nature of that previous slope, instead of buying a temporary easement and you're creating a slope on someone's land that used to be flat. And then giving that land back to them and saying, here you go, you can have this land back. It's now a slope that's unbuildable where before you had a flat area. So it's those type of scenarios where you buy it in permanent easement versus temporary easement. And then because it created that slope, there's just no sort of real we kept it. We just didn't, we didn't turn it back. We bought it in like I said, in that permanent easement. Maybe I didn't say quite how we wanted to, but essentially what we did out there is what we typically do. I'm just going to pull up here and be and share the screen so that we can see that area.
When you do a bridge, that's a temporary easement, correct? Right.
We usually buy, usually becomes permanent.
Oh, there's temporaries too. There's for construction purposes. They have
for construction purposes we buy, but a lot of us will buy quite a bit of permanent out there. And then we might have 10 or 20 feet worth of temporary that we need to use for building around the site.
Well, the main question here is, do we want to vacate it or do we want to keep it? Correct?
The fact of the matter is, this is an after the fact request.
So yeah, that screens up. So
I think we have it in our packet too.
yeah, so
it's been requested too.
This is the parcel. So
Mhm.
currently, you see this blue line here, that's the Cork Hollow right away. This parcel was all wooded, now it is all been clear cut. So this is the 70-foot line off the right of way, and then it jumps out to 150 feet, and then at this very far west end jumps up to 160 feet. The request is to change this right of way so it stays at 70 feet all the way through here. And then this area right here will get turned back to the landowner.
Right.
So in the future, if
The
road
previous
got-
landowner, not the developer.
Correct. So this land here will get turned back to the landowner that owns land on the south side of the roadway.
Correct.
This other shape between this blue line in this current green line, this is a developer, so it's a different landowner than this would get turned back to. So once this gets turned back to the south, then this guy, if he wants, he can sell it to this landowner.
He can
And
sell
this
it, he can keep it, it's up to him what he does with it.
whatever he wants to do with it, yeah. But you can see this parcel that is current exists, you know, I mean, it's a really difficult parcel to try to build something on that its shape. And this landowner on the south side says, yeah, I mean, why, you know, if he's not harmed by the county turning it back to him, and if he can benefit from them, why would he not want that land to come back to him? So.
Right.
So when is the request to continue around the corner and cut back that to a 70-footer?
That's just it, you know, so if you have this request and this now, you know, are we gonna get that next request of, you know, can the county continue the 70-foot down through here? You know, where does the request stop or start? You know, can we get that landowner come in to request that tomorrow? Absolutely. Can that request never come in? Yeah, it might not, so. You know, that's where you take it as case basis, and then you start setting those precedences of where do you want to draw that line on when we turn it back and when don't we.
Mhm. And it's an individual case. This one, we've been working on this for 2 years, I bet.
Because somebody got the cart in front of the horse.
Right. And it's in the city actually too, so.
Yeah, it is not a county.
So this could be handled case by case. That blue line where the number 3 is,
Uh-huh.
that would, to the left of that is gonna be somebody else's land, and that's not the issue today. Today's issue is that little piece there that's,
Mhm.
and that
So-
would make that piece of property more buildable, perhaps,
So Brian,
benefit to the town, or to
To
the
the
city of Brownsville.
right,
Exactly.
so if the neighboring landowner, where's the cutoff for the city there? Is
The blue
it the section line there?
Actually,
City.
it is,
Because you were saying, well, I don't know if it was you or Bob, saying if the neighboring landowner wants to request
yeah, so
his 70 feet to be pushed back or whatever, is he still in the city of?
this, so you can see this, the city comes way out over. to
Oh, okay.
here. I mean, it's-
Oh,
All agree a city, right?
So this parcel is way up here. City limits actually goes way out near the bridge that was replaced
Mhm.
several years ago out here. So
Well, what do you guys think?
I don't have any problem with vacating this and settling this issue. It's a small area and it makes it buildable for city income, taxes and more depending on what the owner wants to do with it, of course. But that's not our decision.
And
I don't see.
we've
any-
sent the precedent from the past by doing the same thing.
Yeah,
It's a different precedent from the perspective that we had a roadway that had a 90-degree turn in it. We reconstructed it and made it an angle turn. And the guy that had access to his property lost it because this property wasn't used, and we put it back. We cut back to a regular right-of-way, and because the road wasn't there anymore. This is a little different from the perspective that somebody started a project, now this is gonna behoove them to get us to give it back so that they can finish their project. So we're gonna tell people, if you go ahead and start a project out on the right-of-way that's bigger than what you think it should be, and then we're gonna have to give it back to you.
But this isn't being requested by the developer. This is being requested by the landowner.
I don't care what you say, I know who's gonna end up with it.
we don't know that for sure.
but, you know, as I asked earlier, when we do these type of things, we get enough land in case there's some changes in the design or whatever. The design came up that we didn't need all of this property, and I foresee, and I don't even want to say it, because, but the piece of land we're talking about is a benefit to the community of Brownsville, and I think it's a reasonable request at this time. other thing is we do them case by case. In this case here, I can kind of see where Bob's coming from, but for the most part, we should not hinder a development that will benefit the city of Brunswick.
And it's always done that it goes back to the previous landowner who had it before we purchased from.
It has to, because in this case, it wasn't purchased in fee title, it was purchased in permanent easement, so we're essentially vacating county's easement. The underlying rights is still the previous.
Current landowner, not the previous.
Or the current land.
The current.
Yes.
Who actually owns the land right now?
It's Brian Russert. So that is why the land would go back to him.
Mhm.
Or I should say
And
land-
technically and
the
officially,
land doesn't technically go back to him. The county's easement goes away and then he already has the underlying rights. So it just, he just gains more flexibility of what he does with that land.
So then who owns the slope down that they've got dirt all cleaned off of and that little area square up in there, that triangle square, who owns that?
Go back to,
Kelch.
yes, so Sean Kelch owns everything within that other area that was,
So he's bought it from the city?
Whoever owned it.
he bought it from whoever owned that land before.
According to your map, it's.
But it's in the city.
It's in the city limits,
but
but
it's
not
not
owned
owned
by
by
It's
the
not owned by the city, it's within the city.
Right.
it's under city ordinances and
Yeah.
and planning and zoning, not the counties.
Right.
Yeah, so Brian Russert has the underlying rights to the land that's in here. And for that matter, he actually has underlying rights for underneath all of this right away in here. This parcel right in here is owned by Sean Kelch.
Mhm.
So you probably have already explained this, Brian, and I hate to have you go through it again, but why is the reason to have that jog that you wanted that extra land for a right of way for the construction of straightening that curve of the road, or what was it for?
Yes, so if I can,
Because you can see, now you look right there, it bulges out there for whatever reason. You needed that extra right
yeah,
of
so
way.
I'm gonna turn on
I
the,
think slope was an issue.
yeah, it's all because of the slope. So if I turn on the contours, see if it shows up.
So the county looks at that for more control. Is that it?
So when the road was constructed, they had to create this slope. All the way through here, created this back slope that was a 2-to-1, 3-to-1 back
Yep.
slope. So that was all cut down.
Yep.
So when we're cutting down into those areas, or over here, the same thing. Either you buy that land as a temporary easement, you change that slope.
That's
you-
why I was gonna
you
get-
that land back, but the price you're paying for someone when you're changing it from a flat or a somewhat usable parcel to this slope that goes right down to the right of way. Sometimes those slopes will fail, they need to be managed, they need to be maintained. If they're not, then ultimately that material might slough down into the ditch, you need to be able to fix them and stuff. So usually you purchase those slopes
Okay.
as either a permanent easement or a fee title. We actually own their land outright.
But on this particular parcel that's wants to get revert back, that slope has been leveled off
Mhm.
and there's no longer runoff issue
Right.
except for where the site is.
Yep, so as of 2 years ago, there was a steep slope coming down here. And then in the fall of 2020, the landowner went out there and he disturbed all of this area. And, took all the trees out, cut a bunch of the slope back, so now that slope doesn't exist anymore.
Right. And
Was
the
that-
city of Brownsville
It
should
was
have been
not
on,
approved by the county or the city.
right.
Was it the two landowners in conjunction that did that?
No, it was this landowner. It is not Brian Russer. He had nothing to do with this whole disturbance. So,
Is his property disturbed as well, though?
yes.
So somebody went onto his property that was our right of way, cut down the slope. So now to fix this, we're gonna give the right of way back to a property owner that can sell it to the person that cut it down in the first place.
Okay, well,
And he's requested that to revert back to him.
Yes.
Right.
Brian Russer has.
And I can't pull up the highways each drag right there. I could pull a picture showing exactly where that location is in the field.
oh, what do you guys think?
I know what I think.
We'll make a motion. Let's see where we
I
go.
think we should vacate that portion of the right of way to the landowner that owns it.
So if you do make a motion and it passes, there is a resolution that goes along with this.
Yeah,
Which
so,
we would, oh, go ahead.
yes, so, yeah, so if motion passes, yes, we need to have a resolution that gets posted for 10 days in the auditor's office. The landowner, so Brian Russer, will need to be served with that notice, and he has 30 days to appeal it to the courts. So I have spoken with him. He's aware of the process. He was aware that this was coming to the board today. So that way, if he wanted to be on this meeting, he could. I don't think he jumped onto the meeting from what I can tell. But yeah, so there is a process. So I mean, ultimately, he could come back and appeal to the court. I told him, I said, we didn't want to go through this process, just have him appeal it where we ultimately don't turn it back. So, anyone else that feels that they are harmed or maybe harmed by this vacation, they can appeal back to the court as well. So
Okay.
it's not necessarily him. It could be someone else that could appeal it as well.
So the resolution won't actually be approved today.
No, the resolution does get approved and then that appeal goes after.
Okay, so if it's approved, we're gonna call it resolution number 2223. I just want to get that on the record because it came in not numbered. And I picked that number because I had already used 2022 on one of the upcoming ones that we're doing. So and then you would need, if it is approved, you'll need to send it to me in Word so I can copy and paste it into the minutes.
Okay,
Just so
So
you know.
is that a motion, Teresa?
Yes.
So we have a motion to vacate the land. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Been a motion and a second to vacate the land. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye, on the basis of the fact that we're setting a precedent here of go ahead and do it and then come to the county after the fact. I don't think that's a good precedent to set.
Okay, so it passes 4-1. Let's move on to number
No,
4.
we gotta do something about that 22-23.
Do we have to approve the resolution too now, or?
By passing the
yeah, so the resolution needs to be approved. So whether that motion include the resolution or not,
Teresa, you
He
want to?
has to include the resolution,
Okay.
what, 2020.
22-23.
2223 will be the number, yeah, and
Okay.
you will send it to me in Word. Thank you. Okay.
All right, everybody happy with 3?
No, but we're moving on.
Oh, I know we've got one
We
there.
move on, right?
Okay, we're going to number 4. Consider approving a change order request number 39, an additional $8,453.85 for hazardous material testing and abatement. Brian.
yeah, so this is change order number 39 for the new highway shop project. This is associated with the demolition of the existing building. The original contract had an estimate in there or allowance of $20,000 for the abatement and all the testing that was needed for that. The actual costs, Brown Intertech for their testing was $4,143.85. They bid out the abatement, received four quotes on the abatement. The low quote was from ACM Abatement and Permitting, or ACM for the abatement and permitting at $24,310 for a grand total of $28,453.85. So that's $8,453.85 higher than what the original allowance was. ACM's quote was, from what I recall from hearing, is that they were the only quote that was under 30,000. So their quote was a good quote, reputable company. So in order to proceed, before we can do any demolition of the current building, we need to do the abatements. So this is pretty much, required to do this in order to finish up the project. What they are telling me is that they want to come in and start the abatement on April 4th. And they've already submitted the stuff to the state for permitting. So they weren't going to wait till the board did that, because they have a 10-day waiting period after the state gets the documentation before they can start the abatement.
We have no choice in this matter, so I make a motion, we approve the abatement.
Been a motion?
Second.
And a second to approve this. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? She carries. Consider adopting number 5. Consider adopting a resolution number 2222 Houston County right-of-way plat number 84 for reconstruction of the state aid project 028-612-014. Brian.
Yeah, so this is a metal culvert. It's a bridge structure, but it's a big metal culvert that's going to be replaced with a new box culvert. The plat essentially, it kind of confirms what our existing right of way is, and we're purchasing a little bit of land outside of the current right of way as temporary easement. So there actually is no new permanent right of way. So it's a fairly standard process. Assuming that this gets approved today, we get everything bid out, we would hope to build this project in the fall. What I'm hearing is that we might not be able to get the culverts in time to get them constructed this year, so I guess spring of 2023 project.
County 12 by Blaine Schultz's place out there.
I'm not sure where Blaine Schultz lives.
He's on the house on the right-hand side.
Okay,
So that's 12.
yes, just beyond.
All right.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve. All in favor? Any more discussion?
And this project will be done next year, you say?
We're gonna bid it out with hopes of getting it done this fall. What I was told last week is that there's a good chance they won't be able to get the culvert until after freeze up this year.
Alright.
So if that's the case, it'll be a spring of 23 construction, so.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 6, consider accepting all quotes for CP 2022-03 for equipment rental.
Yeah, so each year we go out for equipment rental rates. What this is for is if we need to have a contractor help us out for work, either we don't have the equipment available, our equipment's not big enough, or need some additional assistance. This really comes in handy when we get into any type of disaster project where we're in a disaster, we can get some repairs done quickly, look to see who's the low bid, and we go out there and we go out there and we hire them to do some work for us. So this has been done every year for a couple decades now, so recommend approving them all.
Okay, is there a motion to approve that?
Well, what you do is if you need a certain machine, you go to the low bid first, or do
Yeah.
you go to the most accessible bid?
So we go to the low quote first.
Okay.
If they're available, then we use them. If they're not, we go to the next one and we look at the urgency, and if it can wait, maybe we wait till that low quote is available to do it. If it can't wait, then we just keep working up the chain. So.
Okay.
Okay. Somebody want to make a
I'll
motion?
make a motion to approve the quotes.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Consider accepting all quotes for CP 2022-02 for overrated stockpiles.
So this is similar to the equipment rental where we get quotes, so we know what's out there for material and what our prices are. For this, what we do is when we need material, we look at not only the local quote and who's available for material, but also the location. So if there's a quarry that's right next to our job site that has material available, maybe it's not the cheapest, but once we factor in trucking, then that changes to become the cheapest. So we look at this and a little bit different as far as how we use it, but it's still, we look at it and we use it based on what's the most economical for the county. So again, this has been done every year, and we utilize this every year in different roadways, different projects.
So what is the price of rock, or how's that? We buy
Big
it?
variations when you read the
Yes,
list.
it really varies depending on who's providing and what they have available at that time. So for some contractors, they need to bring in the crushing plant to get the rock available. Other ones have the rock ready, sitting there and ready. So prices haven't changed a whole lot from previous years, so that was good to see.
With regard to the rock, and like you said, there's a variation in pricing as far as depending on the quarry and whatnot. Go out and test the rock to make sure it meets our specification, that it's hardness and all of that.
Yeah, so depending on the funding source and what we're using it for, if we're using it
It's
in a
required.
way, definitely have it where it's required. If we're using it for a little bit of a spot on a shoulder someplace where it's in a not critical area, we have less concerns about riprap. We maybe have less concern about the hardness, what to do with surface.
Okay.
So yes, we do test it.
I make a motion, we accept the quotes for the aggregate stockpiles for 2022.
Second.
Been a motion and a second to take the quotes for the stockpile rock. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Consider approving the agreement for acquisition of acreage for the airport expansion. That would be Bob Burns and Brian.
So this has been a long process that we're happy to say that we finally have got to the point where we have an agreed upon agreed land purchase out by the airport. So pull up the beacon map. I'm kind of showing the I think I included it within the agenda request. So so adjacent to the airport on the south side of the existing parking lot area, there's some land that's been recommended for within the ALP, the master plan, to be a future hangar area.
That's his residential site.
The original layout showed roughly the same acreage that we're recommending for approval today of purchase, just in a different shape. It was kind of squared off. It was not quite as beneficial to the landowner to farm. Going through negotiations, we're going through the requirements with the FAA. This shape has changed multiple times. It got into a squared off kind of a square shaped going out into the field that showed it as 3.99 acres, had some triangles, not very efficient areas to the farmer to use. Through negotiations, the shape changed to how it is right now today at 7.93 acres. This will be laid out pretty good for future use for airport expansion. Total price in the purchase offer was based on the price per acre that was in the original appraisal plus damage to the remainder, because we're changing the shape of how that field is, so it changes how that field gets impacted during farming. So the damage to the remainder due to the final shape ultimately got reduced in half of what the original damages to the remainder were. So ultimately, the agreed upon amount is $80,036.32 for a total of 7.93 acres. If this is approved today, we'll get everything submitted to the state for grant approval. We know that this would be covered through FAA's correspondence that they will cover 90% of the cost. We believe that the state will pick up 5% of the costs, so the ultimate cost of the county will probably be about $4,000. If the state does not pick up the other 5, then it'll be 8,000. But based on what we've been told, the state has money available to them to cover their 5%. They just don't have the official letter put together they can send out to us to say, yep, we will absolutely cover it for sure. So
What would happen if they said they didn't?
then the county would.
And what about if, so, but if
FAA
that's
is,
guaranteed,
they have, yep, so yes, they have told me, yes, proceed, go, yep.
okay,
Do I have the official grant in my
No, I know
hand
you
yet?
don't.
That's just not how they function. But yes, they've given the go ahead, saying they agree to the new shape, they agree to the values, they agree. So it's taken a year and a half of
Yes.
revising the shape to get to this point, so.
I was reading where this is gonna disturb some CRP land, so is the landowner
No.
responsible for the CRP?
No, so the county takes over responsibility of the CRP, so any payments, any buyout for any disturbance, to get rid of that CRP, that becomes the responsibility of the county for the portion that we purchase. So
How far in the contract is he on that?
He has told us that it is, he said he's had 5 years in out of a 10-year, so there's 5 years remaining.
So we'd have to pay back 5 years of that portion.
Yeah,
No,
if we disturb it, depending on what we.
But I'm talking about what we bought.
right.
So if we bought that, somebody's gonna have to pay back that CRP.
Not if we go
Not if
do
we
a
don't
disturb.
disturb it. It all depends on when we disturb it. So we can opt to stay in it and let that land keep it, stay in CRP for another 5 years till that.
So a county can participate in the CRP program?
Based on the conversation I had with FSA, they didn't say that we couldn't, and they didn't say that we would have any payback, and the FAA has.
So
has
you've
been
talked to
asking some
FSA about
questions.
this?
I've talked to FSA about it twice. I played some phone tag on the specifics about this, so they didn't pull out the specific CRP agreement to see what is in it. I've been playing too much phone tag there to get that. But from what I've been told in general is that yes, we can remain in it. I don't know that we get any payments for it, but it doesn't sound like we have any payback if we don't disturb that land. Now, any buyout or payback, we do it out of it, that again will be a reimbursable expense through the FAA Midnight Aeronautics, so it won't be the county's full cost.
And you've discussed that with FAA?
Yes. Yeah, but they actually have talked about that as far as do we want to have that in the grant when they ultimately write up a grant for this land acquisition.
So the CRP payment for 2022 is gonna go to the landowner, current landowner.
I guess I don't know when that.
That's
payment
what
goes out.
that's what I read there. Is that right,
Mhm.
Bob? The 2022 payment's gonna go to Urban Barth.
And then if we disturb it prior to the end of the contract, we're responsible for the full 10 years.
So don't.
The 5 years he collected, we accept the responsibility for that. If we disturb it prior to the end
So
of the
a
contract.
good portion of all that is in CRP, correct?
No, just this.
Just that green part?
Just the green
Just that
part.
green part on, yeah,
Alright.
so I think he
It's an acre and a half or so.
mentioned something about the CRP payment was like $600.
Okay.
And we're purchasing.
That's for the whole thing,
That's for
including
the-
all the way out to the highway.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. We're purchasing, about a third of that, so maybe $200 per year worth of the county's part portion, so. it's not
If we
huge.
disturb it, if we don't disturb it till the end of the thing, it doesn't cost us anything.
And this is no
Well,
planned
if we don't-
expansion right now, tonight,
It's to have it available so we can do our plan.
but nothing's
There's no
on the
construction
paper
on
yet.
the paper.
Okay, so if I would take 3-4 years to disturb it anyway,
It
so.
might take us 5 years to get it all planned out.
Yep.
Who knows, though?
So we purchase this land. Then the proceeding is, what are we gonna do with it and what are we gonna build on it?
Yep, so
And then we will have decisions made by the board on how if we're gonna build hangars, or if we're not gonna build hangars, we're gonna have somebody else lease it and they build the hangars or whatever. That's coming down the pike,
That's
right?
down the pipe.
That's
yeah,
nothing like
that'd
It's
be the
not
next-
decided
the
today.
next step is, yeah, when do we build, do we build the, all the pavement to make the space available for the hangars? Until that decision's made, I don't believe that there's anything preventing the county to lease that land out for crops, like what we do currently within that airport. We lease out about 19 acres that is farmed. We would be able to still lease that out, as far as my understanding at this point as well. So if the county doesn't build on it for 5 years, we can continue to essentially lease it out for crop.
Except for the CRP grant.
Except for
Well,
Okay.
it's a small amount, but I mean, it's some of the details you need to work out and find out for sure who's gonna have to pay that back. And
yeah, so what will be the county's cost for that portion within the delay?
Yeah.
coverage?
And I find it highly unlikely that the county can participate in the FSA or CRP program.
They,
I don't know of that situation.
they knew I was talking, that they were talking with county highway department, who they were talking to. So I don't know if we get the payment, but maybe if we don't disturb it, then we don't need to pay it back. That might be the deal, but they didn't. Both of them.
What's the
and FAA
understanding of the landowner? What's his understanding of
I'm
that?
talking with Irvin. He is under the understanding that if by acquiring this, if this gets disturbed, we pay back the full amount.
Okay.
He doesn't pay back anything because we've acquired the property. We absorbed.
And
the
he only
liability.
gets the payment for 2022 and that's it.
That's it.
Yeah. This, we should have this one page right behind exhibit A, that talks about this split with the purchase. So essentially, because this land gets divided into two parcels, that CRP obligations get split to the different parties as well. So and this is standard language they got from the recorder's office that gets used quite a bit, and that the FSA has agreed to and allows. So
Okay, somebody want to make a motion to purchase some land?
I will make a motion that we agree with the acquisition of the acreage for the airport expansion with the purchase of land from Mr. Irvin Barr.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to purchase this land. Any more talk? Anybody got any more discussion?
The other thing I just wanted to mention was there's a date in April. If we don't have this approved by that time, the reimbursement from FAA doesn't come until 2023 instead of 2022.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed, motion carries.
You didn't fall out of your chair, Bob.
Brian, did you ever talk to the DOT or about that turn? I got a call on that turning lane. I had 14th Street in McCrescent about making it a one instead of a turning lane until past 14th
So,
Street.
yep, I did talk to guy that's number 2 at their traffic office over there. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm actually trying to set up a meeting for talking about some stuff in Brownsville. I figured that because I'm gonna bring up similar things.
okay.
So
Okay, sounds good.
Number 9, consider approving the list of proposed write-offs totaling $51,405.03. John.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
First of all, sorry for interrupting your meeting earlier today. I
Yeah.
have made it through 2 years of Zoom meetings and haven't done that yet, but ended up doing it twice today. So had some Zoom issues. I apologize. This is a pretty standard action item that we periodically do, looking at different debts that are owed to the county. And if you look at the list, the vast majority of them have exceeded the statute of limitations for us to be able to take action and recover those debts. There's a several that the individual is now deceased, and then one who is apparently living in China. And so that kind of complicates our ability to recover that debt. So my recommendation is that we write off these debts. This is, as I said, kind of a customary thing that we do periodically.
Is this something that's built into the budget, John, that we have an annual anticipation?
No, this would be more the types of debt that we recover on behalf of the state. And so we get a portion of what we are able to recover. I think it's a 75-25. So we do collection work for the state of Minnesota. And so these would not be things that we were anticipating in our budget.
So it isn't costing us anything either.
No.
So this is a state cost. The state's taking the bite on this one.
Let me restate that. Some of these are for county payments, things for social services types of service that are owed to the county. We did not build that into our revenue projections. But there are always a number of these that we're pursuing collection on. These have exceeded the statute of limitations. So it's a customary thing, but I don't believe that it impacts our revenue projections.
But the expenditures that we put out are part of the budget.
They are, but these are really old.
Right. But I mean, every year we have some of this, so every year there's going to be some write-off.
Correct.
Yeah. This is a typical amount. I mean,
Yeah, I think the last one we did about a year ago was 60-some thousand. I'd have to look back to find out what previous years have been.
Okay. Any more questions?
You know, to the budget question, I will verify my answer on that. But I don't believe that impacts this action impacts our revenue projections, but I'll verify that and send something to the board.
thank you.
All right. Somebody want to entertain a motion to write that off?
I'll make a motion to write off the $51,405.
Nobody likes the idea of writing
No.
something off.
I know.
I know.
I'll second the motion.
But
It's a
we have to do it.
bookkeeping thing, apparently, balancing thing.
Okay, we haven't got much choice here, I don't think, so we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Anybody, all in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed? Motion carries. So we want to do 10, or should we jump and do the Wildcat? And that number 4 from the consent agenda before we get into the ARPA funds?
I think we should
do-
do it.
Do
Yes.
the latter.
Uh,
Yeah, jump to 11.
Okay. Wildcat, that's our next discussion. Louis, you want to talk about what we did at the finance committee today about it?
In the finance committee, we're kind of a little bit late on getting things organized as the manager down there. Jake has been the manager for years, and a lot of discussion about requiring the insurance, the liability insurance. And I have mixed emotions on that personally, but I think for this year, we need to go forward to get things going, because we're looking at a month. And we need to make sure that come fall that we do address all the issues that we've been talking about over the last few weeks. And I don't have the contact in front of me to per se. Maybe Donna can address some of the amounts or whatever, but I think we need to get forward and allow Jake to manage the facility this year as has been in the past with the same conditions as in the past.
Because if we're gonna hire somebody new, we've got to do that between November and December, because January 1, they gotta be taking reservations. So that's the problem, is we gotta get it done right away in November when we get over with the campsites. If we're gonna do a change, and we talked about putting the credit card thing in. And that sounds like that could be done because there is internet down there, there's telephone line that goes in, so.
I know Bob's on the committee and we didn't have a chance to visit on it. Maybe.
Something to add, Bob?
And it goes to what Carol had said earlier too, with regard to the contract, who's responsible for what? If we put in the internet, is it a county deal as far as reservations? Actually, it should be whoever has am I right, Carol? Whoever has the contract should be putting in the,
Contract should be providing the online registration, and if they're accepting credit cards, and it should be all on their end. And from what I understand, Kim has been willing to help her dad get that set up.
Okay.
So maybe we just encourage that for this year.
Yeah.
But
and it'd be for whoever gets the contract to run Wildcat, be it Jake, or if he wants to be done, whoever gets it, it's gonna be their responsibility.
Right.
And that's what, commissioners, that's what Andy reiterated to me too. He said that he doesn't want the county to have any responsibility of any of the credit card maintenance or anything. He wants whoever is running the campground to run that completely and not have it hooked up to the county at all. So that's what his wishes are from the security standpoint. And I think Luke is from IT is looking at some options for us, but he's kind of wondering what we really want, and I'm not sure what we want at this time. I said right now my main concern is just figuring out where we stand with the contract. Like Dewey said, are we going to move forward and let Jake just carry on and we do the contract as is, like he has been in the past, or do we redo the contract with any changes and then move forward that way? But maybe Tess is here, isn't she?
Yes.
She is. She was going to check on some insurance quotes, and maybe Tess, you can. I don't know if you know anything yet, or if you have anything for the board to add.
Only thing I would have to add is that this, the contract's under consideration, potential contract drafts under consideration with the county attorney's office as to what if any insurance issues need to be addressed and how they'd be addressed.
So we're waiting for Sam to come up with a contract for us to approve. We can't really approve a contract here if we don't have the details of
No,
the
we can't
contract.
approve the contract today,
you can approve the contract as it stood last year. You can
So one of
approve
the-
the contract without any.
But that's what we're doing here is we're gonna approve the contract like same as last year.
Right.
But are we gonna try to change the contract in midstream? So basically, we're gonna approve,
The contract as is.
same
if
contract
we
have.
approve, it'll be the same contract we had last year.
So,
The revisements that Sam comes up with or your insurance quotes,
Will need to be addressed at the end of the season for next year.
mhm.
so have you gotten any insurance quotes?
They had several questions that they needed some data with regards to how receipts were done, number of spots. We've got some information to send back, and we're getting a quote from in town. The only thing I can add to this is that in my discussions, and I can speak on behalf of the county attorney, so I'm hesitant to do that. But the only thing that we discussed was because once we determined that what the cost of comprehensive general liability would be, that would be something that the contractor would have to purchase, and that the county may want to consider reimbursing as part of the package. And I don't know what that would be. There are several factors to determine the cost of that insurance. And I've been in conversations with a local company, just to get some general idea. And if not for this year, that's fine. I think maybe it was some determination to have it, then all worked out for the following subsequent contracts.
Well, we got to get this cleared up for next time around because we've been talking about this for, well, 2 or 3 years actually.
Well-
Louis. So
So it would include things such as what kind of vendor, some of the issues that are being looked at is to meet the gap in liability coverage as landowners or land occupiers, the county and the Tort Claims Act, how much, how do we go about doing that, being that this is monetarily a small contract for this contractor. It doesn't always make sense to, for them to go out and buy this insurance, and we're looking at $2 million per occurrence with,
it's going to be expensive.
it's going to be a pricey, so it's something the county should put into their budget maybe for next year, as well as how do we want to handle vending, because, and that's all part of the insurance because of the, if you, even if it's prepackaged food being sold, there's some liability issues there. And one of the big liability issues is how are the payments flowing through, and how is receipting being, for lack of a better term, audited, if you will.
Well, I feel that there's still too many questions to try and keep it open. I think we need to go forward and get things going because we're weeks out. There are things happening that should be happening now before the season, that if we don't have a contract, he won't be able to facilitate, namely some painting and other issues. And I think it behooves us on the Parks Committee for sure, and the whole board maybe, but come fall, we really hammer this out and have all our ducks in a row before the end of the year. So I move that we, at this time, continue the same contract as last year with Jake being the manager of Wildcat under the same terms as last year.
Okay, there's been a motion to keep Jake under contract, just the same as last year. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Been a motion and a second. Any more discussion on Wildcat?
I would just encourage you guys on the Parks Committee to pursue,
Pursue this in
work out the
November.
details of how we're going to do this next year and address those concerns. So,
Brian, there was one concern about painting that was brought up. You want to speak on that?
Well,
We gotta
Shelters?
vote on
we got to
it.
vote on this first.
Okay, well, okay, there's been a motion and a second to put Jake in charge and under the same terms as last year. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Motion carries. There was some discussion about painting. The guy who wants to paint
Yep.
shelters.
Yep, so Jake has been speaking with the individual down at the park as far as painting the, some of the picnic tables and shelters down there. And the latest item, and I know that Donna's on here as well, and she's spoken with Jake about this. Being told $6,000 to paint the shelters, cost includes the paint and the labor to do that work. And, kind of wanted to get a go ahead from the county on, does the county agree with, providing $6,000 to have them paint that shelter or the 3 shelters. So the shelters haven't been painted in decades. You can tell that, just by looking at them that they're not, freshly painted. So does somebody want to paint them or not, overall longevity or value, what does that provide as far as longevity with painting it?
maybe not a whole lot. Aesthetically, definitely adds aesthetics of the parks. So, you know, that ultimately forward decision as far as, you know, do you approve of the paint or not? So, is there anything I missed on that, Donna?
I don't think so. I think, you know, that this Mr. Sears, is the one who has the quote or gave the quote to Jake. And he wanted to purchase the paint now because it's on sale, and that's, you know, that's what the waiting period is for. I mean, we're waiting on to hear if it's okay with the board to do it or not, for him to move forward on getting this done.
And that's just for the shelters, not for the picnic tables, right?
Well, he said he's painted 50 benches. I don't know if he means, if the benches mean picnic tables or if they mean benches. I'm not sure what that means, but he said 50 have already been painted already. You know about that, Brian?
Yeah, he's got picnic tables.
Yeah, he's painted picnic tables down there, and I don't think the county's paid him anything for that cost that I'm aware of.
No, according to Jake, he did it for free and volunteered, and then he also got the paint donated, is what I understand.
What's it gonna cost us?
So can you have them fix the cracks in the cement too, put some fillers in there so people don't trip?
Yeah, so we're gonna do that with our highway department staff. We already bought we had to buy a grinding wheel for 80 blocks to grind down the lips where the cracks are, where it's shifted for that floor. So we're gonna do that and do some sealant in the cracks and stuff. When our staff goes down there to get everything ready for the spring. So in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I would guess, probably 2 weeks, we'll probably be down there to start getting everything ready for the park to open.
Any more on that?
I just don't know if it's worth spending $6,000 to paint those shelters that haven't been painted for years, that have other issues with them too. I know they don't look the greatest, but
I got roof problems.
they're putting a Band-Aid on something that's not great.
You know, the alternative is to build something else then. And that's been discussed, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
We can keep it going for a couple more years and then by that time, see what's left over from this ARPA money. Maybe that's when I think right now, it's a Band-Aid, I agree, Bob, but it needs to keep things going. And I think I asked a question about, is that steel good enough to last us a while? And is it worth putting paint on, basically, bottom line, so.
Is it worth putting the paint on?
It's a subjective question.
nobody wants to commit on that.
I mean, overall, I mean, there's been some little, leak strips and stuff in there and stuff, that a lot of those holes, I think, have been patched, so the water's not coming through quite the same as what it used to be down in the shelters, but, is the paint gonna extend the life at this point? I'm not really that sure that it will. Like I said, it definitely changed the aesthetics, but as far as life expectancy, I don't know if it's gonna cause a drastic change in life.
The only thing you're getting is appearance.
Yep.
You aren't getting any extension of life.
Yeah, extend your life on, but just make it look nicer, so first appearance. Well, do we want to move forward and do the painting, or do we want to put that on hold?
Well, is this part of the,
Do we have to vote on this, or do we?
yeah,
It'd have to be a general consensus, wouldn't it? Or is that considered
wasn't-
under the
is it-
Wildcat thing?
it has to be voted on to spend for the expenditure, don't we?
How
Or
much money we have to vote on?
we have to vote on it, and so was it on the agenda?
No,
So we gotta put it on next week's agenda?
We ain't meeting next week.
we have to.
Or, I mean, I'm sorry, April, what is it, 2nd?
Is that too late for when we have people coming in and utilizing something, it's sure nice to have it look like we care.
I mean, when I drive into a place and it looks nice, that makes a heck of a.
It opens May 1st, right?
Mhm.
Officially May 1st, usually depending on weather, a lot of times people start getting in there in mid-April.
Mhm.
April 15th, April,
We can have a
20th.
consensus with a formal vote at the regular meeting,
Sounds like a plan.
so he can take advantage of the
Mhm.
sale and the paint.
Yep.
If the consensus is that it's a good idea.
Well, what's your consensus, Dewey? Right down the line? You want to paint?
I go get her cleaned up.
Okay. Eric?
Yeah, it's fine. It should be, I'm okay with painting it to make it look nicer.
This is their general consensus.
Yeah, just say you come to a general consensus. that we'll do the date. Yes. Go along.
Okay, we'll do a general consensus that we're gonna go ahead with the painting. And we'll take an action item next 2 weeks from now. Okay, everybody happy with that? Okay, now we'll go back to the consent agenda on item number 4. Changing the employment status of Patrick Burns from an engineer assistant from probationary to regular, effective 4/1/22. Yes,
I'll make a motion to approve the
Yeah.
employment. Oh, do you want to say something?
I just highly recommend it.
It's a probationary period to make it permanent. Yeah.
Yeah,
Regular, not permanent. We don't have
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
regular.
Yeah,
regular.
Jim, you made a motion, Teresa?
Yes.
Okay,
and
you
I'll
have a
second
motion.
it.
We had a second. All in favor, say, any more discussion?
We have a recusal.
Are you gonna recuse,
That's
Bob?
coming.
Okay,
It'll come when you have to call for the vote.
okay, all in favor, say aye.
I
Opposed?
I recuse myself based on family thing.
So does that go as a no then, 4-1? That passes, thank you.
Can I make one quick comment?
Yes,
We have a lunch today for a 34 year retiree. 34 years of service and commitment to the town.
it's down in the old,
Than the previous commissioner.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't like to call it the old commissioner.
Because we're all old.
all right, now we're gonna go back to number 10, discuss impossible additional ARPA funds distribution. Carol?
Sorry, while Carol's coming up here, really quick, Donna, before everyone drops off the meeting, can you tell us who's on or write them down for me? Because today we're not able to see on the screen who all is on the meeting.
Sure. Yep,
Oh, it's right here.
I will.
Okay, I'll just come over there. I guess we can see it, just
It
not
is showing on
the
that
Yeah,
one.
we're on full screen here.
I'm just gonna,
Although we don't know who KB is.
Do you know who KB is, Donna?
That's Kat Barnett in my office. She was listening to the presentation.
Okay.
And then, yeah,
All right, so, Bob, you had received a letter from Able and from ICANN.
Yep.
Did you want to expand on those and?
I'd mentioned Able before, but Able sent a letter asking for an appropriation for them for the benefit of existing employees, for the attempt to hire new employees and employment status as far as Able. They're down on employees and trying to keep what they've got and to extend their employees the numbers that they have. ICANN sent also a letter asking for an appropriation. They have a need for a handicap accessibility van for moving their clientele, their handicap clientele to appointments and whatnot, as well as they could use some funding to help with incentives and retention and training as far as new hires for themselves and existing hires. So it'd be my recommendation that we add Able and ICANN at $40,000 apiece on the appropriation list for the ARPA money.
Now, that would be Able within Houston County.
Both understand it's in Houston County.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
I second it.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second to give Icon and Able $40,000 each out of the ARPA funds. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay,
Carol, do you have an updated Excel
I'll do
sheet
that.
or something like that.
Yeah,
Mine's
I'll get that
yeah.
out. I'll add this to it. The other like equipment purchases that we were talking about too, like with the surveyor, he got one quote, waiting on another one. We had some requests or a request from Martin Solid Waste Recycling, different things that they might want to look at. I haven't gotten prices on that, so we'll pull that all together and I'll get that out to you.
Request for ARPA funds?
Yeah, solid waste. we
For
got
what?
a lot of
Different,
stuff.
I don't know, platforms, safety things, gates. I asked him to put together a list with costs on them. And I haven't seen anything. I sent a reminder,
We're
so.
gonna re-rock some of the sites and we need some dumpsters. We need.
And
more
it's not
than-
just requesting ARPA funds, it's seeing where we may have other, how can we accomplish this? But it comes at a time when we have ARPA money, so.
Mhm.
We have to look at what he's talking about and see if it would
Yeah.
classify for ARPA or not.
Well, if
That's what I
you-
said.
if you wanted
I
to
asked
rock
him to
all
put
the-
together a
If
list.
you want to put some rock down, that would qualify, wouldn't it?
Depends on how you all look at
It's
it.
maintenance,
Mhm.
maintaining and improving. Because there
Other
are
than
potholes
that-
in places.
We haven't really gotten any other emails, letters. I guess we've had people who indicated that they were told they should write a letter, but
I've been telling people that they should submit a request for allocation. It comes out that they think they need to request for a grant.
Mm.
It's not a grant, it's an allocation, but everything keeps coming and saying grant. And maybe it's something I've said when I'm talking to them or not, but
Problem is that we're gonna run it.
makes
We're not
business.
advertising for the whole county. It's just certain districts. I get a little.
Certain
But we
types of
haven't-
that.
we haven't
So
gotten anything
what we
either.
should be doing,
I think we're expecting a couple, are we expecting the La Crescent like the Neighbors in Action?
I gotta check on that.
Okay,
Do they have employees or is this a volunteer
they have
organization?
employees, and then there's one that they actually have paid employees.
Neighbors in Action,
Yes,
that's changed then.
Mhm.
I'm
I'll do some
almost,
checking. I'll
well,
do some checking.
Well, we'll
that's
see
my
if they
understanding,
submit-
but
See if they submit a letter.
I'm
was
just,
there one other place that you said that you were waiting to hear back from? I can't think of what it is.
ABC.
ABC, there we go. So those two could be coming, but then I think that is all for the ones that you had contacted thinking that they fit into this certain area. Right?
Handicap, elderly.
my concern is that it's not getting advertised. We're not out there saying, hey, we got this grant program.
Because we have
Because it's
had,
not a grant.
we have had businesses also saying, well, can I get some of that money?
Yeah.
I mean, you're giving it to, so
Well, I think
we probably
everybody,
have to be more consistent in how we're approaching what we're gonna do with the remainder of the funds.
Right.
well, everybody sees it in the paper. We give this and this and this and then people money, they're all scratching their head. Can we get
Mhm.
some,
Right, so,
I look at it from the point of view, I'm talking to people that help the handicap.
Yep.
No,
The,
we're not questioning.
Right.
No.
What, I'm just saying,
It's who's call gonna come forward? That's the problem.
right, not everybody knows about it
Yep.
or.
we're gonna have to
considered.
talk about different organizations that offer assisted living and memory care.
You're talking individual owners, that's not, most of them are all owned by individuals, so you're talking a different, than all these other businesses might say, well, you gave that business some money, how about us?
Well, I think we do it on a by case basis, depending upon how it affects, if it only affects 2 or 3 people, or if it affects a larger group. And the group of people that are in need more than others, I mean, some of them, I remember in other deals, not ARPA, but in years past, the guy has the fanciest house in the street, he's getting these funds, and we can't figure out how he got the funds, but he applied and got them. We just need to let our people know that we will look at them on a case by case. Is
Mhm.
the way I look at it.
There is some confusion because with the CARES Act dollars, we actually had a grant program for businesses. We had an application, they turned in an application and they received funding.
Yep.
Now, because somehow the perception is that we have another grant program, there was a lot of discussion about this, for example, at the career fair. And so businesses were confused, thinking we had another application out there. Where do we go for that grant? Do we just need to write a letter to get the grant? So I think you should maybe decide who you want to approach and then head it off there and then, just move on. There are childcare businesses though that have been asking, and I have been saying that although it hasn't been officially allocated, that probably is coming. And in that case, we might create an actual program just for childcare providers.
Sounds.
But hopefully that's still the intent, and if it's not, I need to stop saying that.
I mean, it was one of the things that was on the list of possibilities.
Right, and
It wasn't.
and that grant that you got to look at the situation, to set up that group of people to study the childcare. When we get the results of that, then we can see what we can do with the money.
Well, it was my understanding that hopefully, yeah, they would guide us and help us create a program
Right.
based on
Countywide
what they
need.
think is best after
Yeah.
talking to these people in the county, yes.
Okay.
How-
Well, we've
I mean,
got
when do
time.
we
It's
find
not like
out?
we gotta spend the money
No.
this
In
year.
that process?
That's right, we got a lot of time. so-
In July, they're actually coming here to meet with our core group,
Okay.
so.
I think we wait and see on that.
Mhm.
Okay, more, so we okayed the Icon and Able and
Yep.
we're good then?
Yes.
on your part for now?
That's all we really had for traditionals, that we have all the information that we need.
Sounds good. Board updates, I guess, board chair, that'd be me, huh? All right. Got, we had a mediation meeting there last Tuesday, 11 o'clock. Went fairly well. Do you want to talk about it a little bit, Eric, or?
No,
It went pretty fair.
well,
I don't know that.
yeah, we don't,
I don't think we can do
we're
that.
not gonna talk about
Open
that.
session.
Okay, well. And then we had another meeting with Andy Milne and Tess afterwards about doing a building. Checking out the building to see how many rooms we can gather up for doing that survey on
Workspace,
it. Yeah.
Study.
Simulation program or whatever they're talking about. We're gonna go forward with that as soon as we get some quotes. I think we've all had a general discussion on going forward with that. If I'm wrong, correct me.
we're just waiting for quotes, yeah.
Yep, is that the way, that's where we're sitting, correct?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. I went to the Wilmington Town Board annual meeting, didn't learn too much there, so. I guess that's about all I have. I got this thing coming up, hearing planning deal on Thursday night. That's could get touchy, it might go good, I hope it does, but. We won't know until then. That's about all I got for you. Okay, and then we'll go to commissioner reports. Who wants to start today? Teresa?
Well, one item I will let Dewey talk about, we have a public hearing April 19th in La Crescent. But Dewey, you can speak on that because you went to the meeting about it, setting it up, didn't you?
We talked about, yes.
Okay, and I missed that one because I was at workforce development meeting, which I had last week. That's going along very well. Our executive director is going to be on maternity leave, but we have really the second person in command is taking over her place and will do a good job. She does welfare reform right now, so she knows the whole program. I went to Winlac, but I think I informed you about that last week, that we're working on the final draft to get our money. I had a long solid waste meeting last week, which we decided, I haven't got the official word yet from La Crosse County, but we can have an alternate for that committee so that we always have a quorum. So I would like the board to consider who would like to be the alternate for me for solid waste committee. I think it's gonna be really important for at least two of us to really know what's going on anyway.
So you need an alternate?
I need an alternate.
I guess I'll do that for you if nobody else wants it.
Okay, sounds good. Then when I get the official word, I'll give your name so that you get all the information.
Whatever works.
Okay. Or do you want me to wait till I get the official word from across county?
Whatever.
Doesn't, okay.
You can
just-
give an alternate whether they like it or not.
Yeah, well, they didn't like it before. This is a new,
Oh, they didn't?
no, they didn't, they've never had alternates
No.
on this committee. But then one time we went to a meeting, we didn't have a quorum. So that's when I brought it up that we need to have people really adverse to it. We got a letter from across county saying that we have 36,000 $487 in credit, and that's how we get that, where our haulers bring in and we get credit for that. It's up to 36,000, but then we do have them do our hazardous waste, which costs, well, they would, Marty thought it's better off than just these letters going back and forth that you have 36,000, but we don't know what we owe. We don't, and how do you figure that out? And for budgeting for us and for them. So I got a letter today from La Crosse County saying they would like us to budget 10,000 per year out of this 36,000, which will increase each year. They figured it will go about 6 years for sure with the credits that we have coming, but that way they can put it in their budget and we can put it in our budget, this credit and the checks to be written. Do you understand what I'm saying? Kind of.
So like when we do these
There's
local,
two, one
Right.
in May and
Right.
one in
So
Houston and one in La
technically
Crosse.
that gets taken out of the
Credits.
credit.
But nobody ever knows what the amounts really are. It's just taken. So this, we want documentation
Well, we
that we
get,
have this credit coming.
right, we get a bill for that, don't we, Carol? We get a bill for those
No.
collection points.
No, we don't.
We don't?
Mm-mm. No, we
Okay.
don't. And they're trying to figure out how they can put it into their budget and we can put it into our budget. And they're estimating 10,000 per year.
All right.
That is just information at this point.
So
So we're gonna pay them and then they're gonna send it back to us?
Basically,
the 36,000 never goes down,
yes. Well, it'll go up every year based on our haulers.
but
But
how
yeah,
how we getting the benefit of the credit? If we're writing them a check and they're sending us a check, the 36,000 never gets adjusted.
Yeah, Corey and I had a little conversation with Martin
yes,
yesterday,
okay,
and that will come off of our credit, that
Right.
10,000.
right.
And why are we writing a check?
It just,
It's
some
it's-
formality or
It's
something.
not really a check. It just has to be in their budget and in our budget.
It's
So
not,
let's
we're not
correct
writing a check, it's a budget number.
Yes,
It's a ledger.
yes.
But we should be receiving a little money every year now for a few years, because we hadn't gotten this
always
money.
do.
Yeah. We haven't gotten much the last few years, Martin said, so it's time that they start coming with some money for us.
Do we get checks, Carol? Or do we get credits?
We
Credit.
haven't got a
It's all
check
just
yet.
been credits.
It's always been a credit,
Okay.
but they're trying to redo it so we know exactly what's costing us, what it's costing them, where it comes off of our credit, how much we're really making on our credits. It's supposed to be more black and white. Then they're doing a pilot program, La Crosse County Solid Waste Places, with these compost bins for residential areas. They're really nice and they can get hold of them for about $50 to $55 each. And they're the kind that have a cover and have a door at the bottom, so you don't have to dig down into it to get your compost out. You open this little door on the bottom. Anyway, they're doing a pilot program, so they are trying to get the word out to know how many of these they should order in the next 6 months or something. If we want them for our residents, they'd have to pay the $50 or $55, whatever it is. But we looked it up, or they looked it up, and they're to go to Home Depot or Menards for something comparable is well over $100 each. So, and people really want it, at least in La Crosse County. But they're gonna offer it to everybody that's part of the Joint Powers Board. So keep it in mind if we think we wanna give them, I know I can't take any because the raccoons would have a heyday with it. But residential, they're very good at figuring out how to open it. But there's a lot of people in La Crosse County that are very interested in residential.
Well, how do we let our people know? Are you interested in this? Contact somebody. Who do they contact?
They'll contact us. Marty or I is what they'll.
Just something about, some people will say, I'm already doing some form of compost, don't need it, don't want it, but some will.
Right.
Let's make it available for those who wish to make the purchase and do it.
Marty was working on that too, and it'll probably be part of the recycling pamphlet. that
Okay.
this- And right now, there's a pilot program, and I think they're only ordering 200, which that could go just to La Crosse easily. But they're thinking in the future, if Houston County is interested, or Trempealeau, or that they would work with us. And there's no cost because people would pay for it.
I guess my only question would be is if I had a compost bucket in the back of my house, fill it up with grass and stuff, I throw old vegetables in there and what? Are these smell free? I mean,
They're
do they
sealed.
seal up
They're-
so
they're
that you don't
sealed
get the
up
stink
totally,
of
yes.
the cool opens it?
They have a lid that you put the stuff in, and then they have an open door in the bottom for,
Okay.
so. And June 15th is their annual meeting, which is gonna be held at Stony Creek. I'm hoping maybe my alternate can go to that because I'm gonna be out of town.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
I know where that is.
It's very interesting because Excel gives their report there too.
Daughter ran, was worked there for a while. I know where that is.
Okay. And then Dewey will talk on that other one as far as no wake zone.
Okay,
Okay, that's all.
you done? Okay, Bob?
I don't have a whole lot to report. I had a collaborative meeting as far as the school and the community with regard to a Bush Foundation grant that's applied for, with the result hopefully being a more welcoming county, as well as a business improvement and welcoming of businesses and families, and a more tolerant community as far as different types of people and whatnot. So that grant is going out. Tonight I got a Selco sales meeting. I'll find out from Selco when they want to start their negotiations on the next, hopefully 3-year contract for that. Last thing I wanted to mention was how nice the steps look on the east side of the building. Now that they put the caps on the sides of the steps, it looks really quite nice as far as the completed project. It's a nice project.
I noticed that when I walked out last week.
It's good.
Eric?
I don't have anything. I couldn't make my river watershed meeting yesterday, so.
The alternate, but I thought he was going to make
Yeah.
it. I didn't go, so it's my fault we didn't have.
I had a
representation.
personal issue, so I had something came up that I had to attend to, so.
Good. Basically, what I have is to do with the no wake zone on West Channel. We kind of did things a little backwards. We sent stuff to DNR, and DNR says, no, you come and send it back. So long story short, Sam and Martin and Amelia are working together, get an ordinance together, send it up to DNR, and, open up for public comment. And then the 19th, over Crescent, set up a public hearing for those who wish to speak and go from there. But they're sending out letters to those that are affected along the section there, about 22 property owners that abut where this no wake zone would be, trying to do everything to say, hey, by the way, this is not just a one-time shot. Once it goes in, it's from spring thaw until river freezes. Be a no wake zone, so they need to understand how in depth it's going to be. It's not just going to be for that one event that started the issue.
Right. But how do we enforce it?
Mark was commenting on that, and he said, well, in the areas that they've investigated where they have them over in Wisconsin already or other areas, they're about 95% compliance. And I think they're not gonna be out there every weekend or every whatever, but they're gonna monitor it, and I think they'll be able to handle it. And a majority of the public understand when it's labeled, it's what it is. So the 5%ers are gonna be just the ones who have to apprehend.
So this is gonna be a county zoning ordinance change?
Yes. It's reached for a public hearing and all the information.
I'm just wondering how you got that accomplished, because we've talked about changing things in the zoning ordinance, and we kept getting told that we can't change it until we do a comprehensive land use plan. So, I mean, I don't have any problem with that, but.
Is it DNR?
Well, so, and it's in the city limits too, so is this the city gonna be?
No, it's just gonna be a county ordinance. Sam's working on it with the DNR and sent our enforcement actually goes, which was interesting when I was reading the background and investigation of the enforcement is from railroad track to railroad track, which was something that was really unusual, but it was kind of interesting how much latitude there is allowed for river things versus land things, apparently. I don't know, but Sam thinks he can put it together, and DNR is just waiting for our piece of paper that they'll look at it.
I think it depends on what the item is, and if it doesn't go against the current land use plan, which it sounds like it probably doesn't, then we can make the ordinance change.
Reference.
Well, a setback issue, 50 foot to 10 foot wouldn't go against the comprehensive land use plan too, either. So we should have done it. Sure would solve a lot of trouble.
I guess I got, oh, go ahead.
One thing I want to mention is, you mentioned the planning and zoning meeting on Thursday. I plan on going that because the contentious issue is in my district. So I'll be there.
I'll stay away.
That's the only thing I was gonna make sure that we didn't end up with a.
I was contacted by the local 49ers president out of Rochester. They would like to bid on our insurance the next time. They were kind of mad. They never got asked to bid the last time. And they would like to bid on our insurance, health insurance.
Our health insurance?
Yes, they would like to have us. Very usual. But I was told that they didn't want to bid, but this guy says we've been they're working on brooding rock products right now to insure health insurance. So he says we would take on your county anytime you want us to. And
They got the city of Caledonia. They do the city of Caledonia.
Well, they said they wouldn't turn us down one bit. He wants to come and give us a spiel on the insurance.
We just bid it last year.
Yep.
They didn't express any interest. They didn't submit a bid.
Well, they,
Southeast Service go out.
well, they said they weren't asked, but I don't know.
Advertising, watch the
Yeah, if
advertising.
you watch your advertising, you should know, right? But they would like to bid on our health insurance the next time. They say you save us a lot of money and it's a lot better insurance. City of Caledonia really likes it. Saved them a lot of money, correct, Bob? That's what they was
The
told.
city of Caledonia took the bid from the 49ers and saved at that time, the city saved on 17 employees, $79,000.
Oof, now we got 200.
So that's what it was then, but that's going back 7-8 years ago.
But also to point out, the rate that the 49ers pay is not the rate that they would charge us for everyone else. They would have to look at our claims history and.
There is a difference between a union member and a non-union member.
Right, well, so now family coverage right now, the county pays $1,600. Their plan is $1,325. A single coverage here at the county is $690.
They don't have
And there is
singles.
no
They have just
single-
family coverage. They don't have singles or anything.
They just have a plan that covers family if you have it or just.
But a majority of ours is probably family. Yeah, I'm sure it is, isn't it?
Necessarily, no.
I have a lot of people that opt not to take it because their
That's true.
spouse
Yep.
has better insurance or whatever.
Well, it doesn't hurt to look at it.
I can't say that we'll be bidding for another 5 years.
I know,
We
Well,
got
We're
three-
required by statute to bid every 5 years.
right.
And we have 3 year with the one we got,
We have a
3 year contract with the one we have, or is it a 5?
It's like an annual contract, although they've guaranteed rates for the next 2 years.
3, I
But
thought,
it- well, you have to-
this year and then 22, 23 and 24.
Right.
So we don't have a 3-year contract. We'd have a yearly contract.
We have an annual contract that they provide a renewal rate.
Yep.
for.
The
Okay,
guaranteed rate for the following year.
Okay, closing comment. Is there any closing comment? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
second.
All in favor of Adjourning, we've had a first and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Uh,
All right, we're adjourned.